You have 30 days to move out, Sarah. My mother stood in my kitchen, tapping her perfectly manicured nails on the counter with a smug smile. We sold your apartment to Lisa, she said. I froze. This wasn't just any kitchen, it was where I built my catering business, hosted family dinners, and took care of my grandmother before she passed. The sunlight spilled through the windows, making everything feel oddly unreal. I'm Sarah Mitchell, I'm 35, and I never imagined I'd face eviction, especially by my own family. Don't look so surprised, my brother James chimed in. He stood beside his wife, Lisa, his arm wrapped around her. You're always away for work anyway. Lisa needs a proper home now that the baby's coming. Ah, the baby. The latest excuse to give James whatever he wanted, like always. I took a slow sip of my coffee, keeping my face calm, even as I noticed the brief flicker of doubt in my mother's eyes. You thought selling my apartment was the answer? I asked. It's not really yours, my mother said, pulling out a folder. Your father and I kept our names on the deed, for tax reasons. We signed everything over yesterday. Lisa and James take possession in 30 days. I remembered my last conversation with my grandmother. She sat in this very kitchen, her voice strong despite her weak body. They'll try to take this from you, she warned. Your mother never forgave me for not giving her this building. Keep this safe, don't tell them unless you have to. She handed me an envelope. Now, facing my family's betrayal, I could feel that envelope upstairs in my desk drawer. Actually, I said, keeping my voice steady, we should talk about something first. I walked to my office. I knew they were sighing impatiently behind me. My mother hated that I turned the second bedroom into an office. A proper lady needs a guest room, she always said. I came back with my own folder, worn, but carefully organized. Before we discuss me moving out, I said, you should see this. Lisa spoke for the first time, her hand resting on her small baby bump. What is that? The real deed, I said, setting it on the counter, and proof of ownership for the building next door. My mother went pale. The papers showed both buildings had been transferred to me, 3 years ago, signed and notarized by my grandmother. This can't be legal, my mother stammered. It is, I said calmly. Mr. Patterson, Grandma's lawyer, handled everything. You might want to double-check that sale to Lisa and James. It's hard to sell something you don't own. James grabbed the papers, his face turning red. You knew this whole time? He snapped. I found out about your plans weeks ago, I admitted. Grandma always said it's better to let people show their true colors. The room fell silent. Lisa sank onto a stool, looking shaken. My mother stared at the deed like she could will it to change. You should have told us, she said, her voice tight with anger. Like you told me you were selling my home? I shot back. The home I've lived in for 10 years? The home where I took care of Grandma when none of you did? The memories hit me hard, late nights balancing my catering business with caring for Grandma. While James chased failed startups and my parents traveled, I put my life on hold. They assumed the building would be theirs one day. What are we supposed to do now? Lisa asked quietly. We already sold our apartment. I felt a pang of sympathy. Lisa always seemed caught up in my family's drama, trying to please everyone. I'm not heartless, I said. There's a vacant unit in the building next door, same layout as this one. You can rent it, at market rate. Rent? James exploded. Would you rather find something else? I asked calmly. I hear the new luxury building down the street has openings. Their 2 bedrooms start at double what I'm offering. My mother stood up abruptly, gathering her papers with shaky hands. This isn't over, she said, but her voice wasn't convincing. Grandma had no right, she added. She had every right, I replied. This building was her legacy, and she chose who to give it to. As they left, James wouldn't meet my eyes. Lisa hesitated, like she wanted to say something, but followed him out. My mother paused in the doorway. You've changed, she said. It wasn't clear if it was an accusation or a realization. No, I said. I just stopped pretending to be who you wanted me to be. After they were gone, I walked through my apartment, running my hand along the walls my grandmother and I painted together, gazing out the windows where we watched sunsets. I opened the drawer in my office and took out her envelope. The important papers were gone, but her last letter remained. Remember, she wrote, sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared, and sometimes, the greatest gift is letting people face the consequences of their own actions. I smiled. She saw this coming years ago. My phone buzzed, a text from Lisa. Can we talk about the apartment next door? Just us? Maybe something good could come from all this after all. But first, I had a security system to upgrade. As Grandma always said, being prepared means staying prepared. The city bustled outside, unaware of the storm that had passed through my kitchen. I had work to do, a business to run, properties to manage, and a family to keep at arm's length. For now, though, I stood in my kitchen, my home, and let myself feel the quiet satisfaction of standing my ground. The next few days were busier than I expected. First, I got an angry call from my dad, who conveniently wasn't around when the whole mess started. "Your mother is beside herself," he said, his voice full of that familiar disappointment. "How could you embarrass the family like this?" I was in my catering kitchen, frosting a wedding cake when he called. "Embarrass the family?" I repeated, carefully piping rosettes. "By owning my home? Or by stopping you from illegally selling it?" "Don't be difficult, Sarah, we were trying to help your brother. Family helps family." I laughed quietly, stepping back to check my work. "Funny, I don't remember any of you helping me when I was sleeping on a cot next to Grandma's bed in her final months, or when I was starting my business from scratch." The silence on his end said everything. Finally, he sighed. "Your mother wants to talk to the lawyer about challenging the deed." "She can try," I replied calmly. "Mr. Patterson has everything on file, including videos of Grandma signing the papers and explaining her decisions. But hey, if you want to waste money on legal fees instead of accepting the truth, that's up to you." He hung up without another word. Later that day, I had a visitor I didn't expect, Lisa. She stood in the doorway of my kitchen, looking smaller than usual without James or my mother hovering behind her. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, one hand resting on her baby bump. "I brought peace offerings." She held up a bag from my favorite bakery. "Those better be lemon tarts," I said, raising an eyebrow. She managed a small smile and pulled out a box. "And chocolate croissants. I remember you stress eating these during wedding season last year." I gestured to a stool, and she sat down. For a moment, we just sat in silence, the smell of butter and sugar blending with the vanilla cake I was working on. Finally, Lisa spoke. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "James told me your parents were giving us the apartment as a gift for the baby. I never thought," she trailed off, looking ashamed. "You never thought they were stealing it from me," I finished. She flinched but nodded. "James said you were fine with it, that you wanted a smaller place since you're always busy with work anyway." She stared down at her croissant. "I should have asked you." I thought about Lisa, how she joined our family full of hope, wanting to fit in. I'd watched my mother and James shape her into their idea of a perfect wife, pushing her to quit her teaching job and encouraging her expensive taste because appearances matter. "The apartment next door," I said, surprising myself. "The offer still stands. 3rd floor, same layout. It needs work, but you can have a say in the renovations." Lisa looked up, hope flickering across her face. "Really? Even after everything?" "One condition," I said firmly. "This stays between us. No family manipulation, no running to my mother. If you and James want to rent it, it's a business arrangement, fair price, everything professional." "James won't like that," she admitted. "He thinks family shouldn't have to pay family." "How's that working out for him?" I asked, thinking about his string of failed businesses, all funded by my parents. Maybe it's time to try something different. Lisa was quiet for a while, rubbing her belly. "Can I see it? The apartment?" I grabbed my keys. No time like the present. The building next door was nearly identical to mine, same 1920s charm. The 3rd floor apartment needed work, scuffed floors, outdated kitchen, but it had huge windows and a solid layout. "It's beautiful," Lisa whispered, running her hand over the old crown molding. "Even like this." "It needs updating," I agreed, "but I was planning to renovate anyway. If you want it, you can pick the finishes, make it your own." She turned to me, eyes shining with tears. "Why are you being so nice to me after what we tried to do?" "Because you're the only one who apologized," I said simply, "and because I think you're ready to stop letting them make your choices for you." Our phones buzzed at the same time. The family group chat, I'd muted it days ago. My mother sent a long message about an emergency family meeting this weekend. "Your father and I have made decisions about the future of both properties. Attendance is mandatory." Lisa looked at me, panicked. "What are they planning?" I deleted the message without reading the rest. "Nothing that matters. They don't own these buildings, remember? They can plan all they want." "James will expect me to go," Lisa said quietly. "They'll expect us to side with them, against you." "And what do you want?" I asked. She looked around the apartment again, taking in the light, the space, the potential. I want to make my own decision, she said softly. I want my baby to grow up in a home that's ours, really ours, even if we're renting, not something stolen from someone else. I pulled out my phone and drafted a quick email to my contractor. I'll have renovation plans by next week. Standard lease, fair market rent, first month free while the work's being done. But Lisa, I waited until she met my eyes. This has to be your decision, not James's, not my mother's, yours. She squared her shoulders, looking more sure of herself than I'd seen in years. I'd like to see those plans when they're ready. As we headed downstairs, another text came in, this one from my dad. Your mother is looking into legal options. Don't force us to take this further. I showed it to Lisa. She shook her head. They really don't know when to stop, do they? No, I said with a small smile, but they're about to learn. Lisa smiled back, a real one this time. For the first time in a long time, I felt like something good might come out of all this after all. I started to realize things were changing. The way my family worked, all the control and manipulation, was starting to crack. Maybe this wasn't just about keeping my property anymore. Maybe it was about breaking those old, toxic patterns for good. Want to help me finish this wedding cake? I asked Lisa. I remember you used to be good at flower arranging before my mom decided it wasn't classy enough. She smiled, genuinely this time. I'd like that. And, thank you, not just for the apartment, for showing me there's another way to do things. As we walked back to the kitchen, I thought about something my grandmother once told me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's showing others how to break free too. The family meeting was set for Sunday at my parents' big suburban house. I wasn't planning to go, until Lisa called me late Saturday night, crying. They're planning something, she whispered. James keeps having secret calls with your dad's lawyer. They're saying your grandmother wasn't in her right mind when she left everything to you. I sat in my office, looking at a picture of me and Grandma from the day I opened my catering business. Let them try, I said calmly. Mr. Patterson has video recordings of everything. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing. There's more, Lisa said, voice shaking. They want to use the baby, say we deserve the properties more because we're starting a family. James doesn't know I'm telling you this. I took a deep breath. Lisa was standing up to them. She was choosing honesty over loyalty. Thank you for telling me, I said softly. Will you be there tomorrow? Yes, she said, voice stronger now, and I'm done playing their games. Sunday was a perfect autumn day, the kind Grandma loved. I arrived exactly on time. The driveway was full of cars. Everyone was already there. Inside, the tension was thick. My mother sat in her favorite chair like a queen. My father stood behind her, and James paced near the window. Aunts and uncles filled the rest of the room. Lisa sat off to the side, meeting my eyes as I walked in. Sarah, my mother said coldly, so glad you could join us. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, staying on my feet, though I'm curious why we're here. The properties are already legally mine. My dad stepped forward with a folder. We've been reviewing things. Our lawyer has concerns about your grandmother's mental state when she signed everything over to you. Really? I said evenly. You mean when I was taking care of her while all of you were too busy? You manipulated her, James snapped. You turned her against us when she was vulnerable. Before I could answer, Lisa stood up. No, she didn't, she said loudly. I was there sometimes. Grandma was sharp. She knew exactly what she wanted. The room went silent. James stared at her, shocked. Lisa, sit down. This doesn't involve you. It does, she said, walking over to stand beside me. You're trying to steal her home, using our baby as an excuse. I won't be part of it. My mother's face darkened. Lisa, dear, you're upset. It's the pregnancy hormones. Don't patronize me, Lisa shot back. Sarah offered us a nice apartment, a fair rent, and a chance to make our own home. But that's not enough for you, is it? You have to control everything. I took out my phone. Before this goes any further, you should see something. I connected it to the TV. Grandma's face appeared on the screen. I'm recording this, she said in the video, because I know my daughter. She never forgave me for keeping the buildings from her when she got married. But property isn't just about ownership, it's about stewardship. Sarah understands that. She's built something real, helped others build something too. The buildings are hers, fully and legally. Any attempt to fight this will only show your own greed. The video showed her signing papers, with Mr. Patterson confirming everything. She was clear, calm, and fully aware. When the video ended, no one spoke. There's more, I said quietly. Medical records proving she was competent. Witness statements. How far do you really want to take this? My father dropped his folder. My mother looked pale. James turned to Lisa, furious. You knew? About the apartment? You've been talking to her? Lisa stood tall. Yes, because she's the only one who's been honest with me. The only one who gave us a real chance, not lies and manipulation. The renovation plans are ready, I added, if you're still interested. But this ends now. No more threats. No more games. The buildings are mine, period. My mother stood up abruptly. I think you should all leave. We need time to process this. As we left, Lisa grabbed my arm. I want to see those renovation plans, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, for our new home. Outside, the sun was setting. Lisa and I walked to our cars together, leaving the sounds of arguments behind us. You know they'll never forgive us, she said softly. I thought about Grandma's words, about stewardship and building something real. Maybe, I said, but we'll build something better. 6 months later, I stood in the newly renovated apartment next door, watching Lisa arrange fresh flowers in the sunny kitchen. Her baby bump was bigger now, and the nursery down the hall was ready. The place looked amazing, warm wood floors, bright open rooms, and a gorgeous kitchen. The marble countertops were worth every penny, Lisa said, adjusting the flowers. She'd rediscovered her love for arranging flowers, even started a small business, making centerpieces for my catering events. James was still adjusting to paying rent, but he had taken a real job at a consulting firm. He wasn't talking to me yet, but Lisa said he was different, more focused, less entitled. My parents tried giving me the silent treatment, then guilt trips, then finally acceptance. The real turning point came at Christmas. My mom showed up at my door, looking older and unsure. I've been thinking about what your grandmother said, she admitted, about stewardship, about building something real. She took a shaky breath. I didn't build anything, I just expected things to be handed to me. Now, watching Lisa get ready for her baby shower, the first family event hosted in their new apartment, I knew things weren't perfect, but they were better, and maybe that was enough. Since the confrontation, I kept thinking about how much had changed. Your mom RSVP'd, Lisa said, like she could read my mind. She asked if she could bring her lemon squares. I raised an eyebrow. The famous lemon squares she never shares the recipe for? She offered to teach me how to make them, Lisa said with a small smile. Baby steps, right? My phone buzzed, a message from my property manager. A longtime tenant needed some repairs. Both buildings were thriving now. I had started a program helping small businesses rent spaces affordably, and it was amazing to see people's dreams come to life. Miss Mitchell? A voice called from the hall. It was Maria, one of my tenants. She ran a busy alterations shop downstairs. I brought curtains for the nursery, she said, smiling, and some empanadas too, my grandmother's recipe. This was the community Grandma had imagined, people supporting each other, building something together. As Lisa and Maria chatted about the curtains, I slipped into my apartment and pulled out Grandma's last letter from my desk drawer. The paper was worn, but her words were still clear. Property is more than bricks and mortar, Sarah. It's about creating spaces where people can grow, where communities can thrive. You understand that in a way your mother never did. A knock interrupted my thoughts. I was surprised to see James at the door. Can we talk? He asked, looking uncomfortable but sincere. We sat in the kitchen, the same place where all of this had started months ago. He stared into his coffee cup, thinking. Lisa's happier than I've ever seen her, he said finally. The apartment, her flower business, even the way she stands up to Mom now. I didn't realize how much we were all suffocating under their expectations. And you? I asked carefully. I'm learning, he admitted. Real work, real responsibilities. It's hard sometimes, but it feels better. He looked up. I'm sorry, Sarah, for trying to take your home, for not standing up to them sooner. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again, another message from the property manager. This time, it was about a small bakery hoping to rent a space. Want to see something? I asked. Something Grandma understood that took me a while to figure out. I took him downstairs and showed him around Maria's bustling alteration shop, old Mr. Chen's cozy bookstore, the new art gallery showcasing local artists. Each one of these spaces is more than just a business, I explained. They're dreams, people building something of their own. James was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. Like Lisa with her flowers, like you with your catering. Exactly, I said. The apartment was never just about having a place to live. It was about having the freedom to build something that's ours. That evening, while Lisa and I prepped for the baby shower, I thought about family, not just the one you're born into, but the one you build around you. Maria dropped off more empanadas. Mr. Chen brought his special tea for the party. Even my mom called, asking if she could come early to help set up. I invited Grandma's old friends, Lisa said, arranging name cards on the table. They keep asking about you. You know, they're proud of how you've handled everything. The next morning, I stood in my kitchen, but it felt different now. Through the window, the sunlight hit both buildings, making them glow. The sidewalks were already filling with people heading to work or school. In a few hours, the streets would be alive with family and friends celebrating new beginnings. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from my mom. Need help setting up? I brought the lemon squares, and the recipe. I smiled, thinking of Grandma's words about stewardship and growth. Sometimes standing your ground isn't about keeping what's yours, it's about creating space for others to grow into better versions of themselves. Outside, the city woke up. Maria was opening her shop. Mr. Chen arranged books in his window. Lisa was probably already up, setting flowers for the shower. This was what victory really looked like, not winning a fight, but building something better after it was over, something that would last, long after the arguments were forgotten. I opened a group chat with Lisa and Maria. Breakfast before the chaos? I'm making coffee. Their replies came quickly, full of enthusiasm. In my kitchen, I started the coffee, pulled out fresh pastries, and opened the windows to let the cool morning air in. This was home, not just my apartment, but the whole community we built together, and this time, it was built on a foundation strong enough to last.